Our lives have changed dramatically over the past 6 months. Students up and down the nation left halls, left houses in a matter of days, hours, maybe even minutes, in the hope of getting home before the face of a national lockdown. And the same question seems to repeat itself amongst that age category. Why us? Why were we the ones whose lives were changed, yet the ones who were blamed? Why can't we continue with normal life? And why is there still no light at the end of the tunnel? I've spoken to students up and down the nation who may have faced different problems, but all have the same issue at heart. When will we get back to normal? And when will things feel the same again? This is coronavirus, a not-so-student life. Everyone can remember that dreaded weekend in March. That weekend where one moment we were getting ready to go back to our 9 AM on that Monday, and the next minute everything has been cancelled. Universities were one of the first things that shut down before this lockdown happened. They changed our lives, maybe not for the good, but it had to be done. During that week, students fled from their halls, from their houses, back to a place of serenity, of safety, parents at home. I've spoken to students who faced different situations from different universities when it came to leaving their student halls. Some were told they would be charged unless they left, despite the fact they weren't even living there, whilst others were allowed to go scot-free knowing that they won't be paying for months they won't live there. First, I spoke to Thomas, who attends Oxford Brookes University. He was a first year last year and lives at home in Sunderland, so the train journey home was not only harrowing, but long.
You know, people like myself, the final year, that sort of instalment we were all paying for accommodation was still going to cost about £2,100. And so even with this discount, the instalment only started about 2 weeks before everything got closed down, which, if you just do the simple maths, is only about £400. There's quite a large number of people who are still yet to pay the instalment, but you know, as difficult as the choices for the university, they have given the option to look at specific cases, and if sort of you fall under this bracket of, I say, special requirements, or if you fall under certain criteria for this, then they have let it off, and you know, it's still an ongoing thing, and I don't expect it to sort of be solved instantly. They asked, so the whole accommodation situation was before and then sort of during, for the first week or so in lockdown, when they were deciding what to do with accommodation fees, because so many people had left accommodation, but then there were still, you know, because there's about 15,000 students in Brookes, there was still a good $1,000 still using their accommodation, so they had to accept money from somewhere. Well, they were sort of the factor that influenced Brookes to still charge the accommodation.
Eve, who is a student at York University, wasn't faced with the price cap that some students had throughout the pandemic.
So at first it was unsure, as with everyone, but then we got an email, I think April time, because we were due to go back mid-April, and they said if you fill out this form you won't have to pay the rest of your loan, like for the accommodation. So we got all of it back, and that was going to be the biggest instalment, so I kept all my student loan, which was better for now, for paying my next bit of rent for year 2. So
is that for all students, regardless of whether you were there or not?
So as far as I know, it was for all year 1 students. I do not know what happened with year 2 and year 3. I'm imagining they didn't get anything back, but it was good for me because obviously I got to keep the money, which is great for students. Yeah, I think it was definitely the right decision, because all the slots you had to book, say when you were coming, so they were distance from each other. I think it was one person in a block at one time, so that was good. We could leave. I don't think I collected my stuff till June, July time, and we didn't get charged at all, which was fab. They said they'll store, if you can't come and get it, they'll store it off campus for you, and then you just come and get it. Whatever you need to leave that you don't want, they'll just chuck. I think they did it fab. Obviously this was just my college, but I'm assuming they did it for the rest of them. But my college, definitely, with all my belongings, they felt safe there. I was fine leaving them, and yeah, I think they did it well.
Benji, who attends the University of Manchester, said that he had to leave his halls rather quickly because he believed he would be charged for months that he did not live there.
I went home on the Thursday originally, when lectures were cancelled. And then by Monday, my family were like, we need to go back and get your stuff. So it was literally that weekend when everything just went hectic. And then on the night time, that's when Boris's announcement for lockdown came in as I was going to pick up my stuff. So at the beginning, everyone thought that you'd have to pay. Yeah, so that's why. Because I think maybe there was a deadline by the 30th, or I can't remember when it was, but there was a deadline when we were told you have to pick up your stuff. So I was scared if I didn't before then, we'd have to pay for the next instalment.
After Benji finally left Halls and handed in his keys, some students weren't able to collect their belongings. However, despite threats from the university, students were eventually reimbursed. Sophie attends Newcastle University, but she lived in private student halls last year. She said they were actually rather good with dealing with the situation and even helped them by letting them leave their belongings behind and getting home to their parents.
I'm in private accommodation and they were like quite quick with getting back about refunds and stuff like that, but I know a few people who were in university accommodation and it took quite a while for them to like receive refunds and find out what was happening. And basically I like didn't get mine charged, so I had to pay for the month of April and then I didn't have to pay for like May and June, so I sort of just like had the price reduced. They were okay with us leaving stuff. Like I have a few friends from the lakes and obviously it was a bit more of a journey for them to get there, so they just left the stuff. But I sort of was in a position where it's only a half an hour drive from where I live and we were like, we might as well come through and pick my stuff up. But I think because, as I said, my accommodation was private, it wasn't through the uni, they were actually quite good with being like flexible with people who couldn't come through to pick the stuff up. But personally I did, just because I'm not too far away.
Travel restrictions have been in place in the UK since early on in the pandemic. However, over the summer, some people saw respite in being able to go and catch the sun for a few weeks. Sophie was one of them, and along with her friends, they booked a holiday, only to find out that when they got there, their destination had again been removed from the travel corridor and they had to quarantine for 2 weeks on return.
So basically, when they announced the travel corridors, me and my friends were like, oh, you know, let's just escape the country, go away. And we were like, just trying to think of where is probably safest. And at the time, we were like, oh, you know, Malta, it's a small island, hopefully it should be quite safe. So we booked to go there. Anyway, I think about 5 days before we were supposed to go, like the cases in Malta was really bad, so it got removed off the travel corridor. So we had to last minute ring up and rearrange to go to Croatia. And then when we were there, that got placed on the quarantine list, so that was really fun.
So that actually happened whilst you were in Croatia. You'd gone to Croatia, it was on the travel corridor, everything was fine, and you got there and it was too late.
Yeah, it was the day after we got there. So we arrived on the Wednesday and it was the Thursday night. My friend's mum rang her. She was like, oh yeah, by the way, you have to quarantine for 2 weeks. And we were all like, oh no. And obviously I'm working at the minute, so I had to ring them up and just be like, I have a little bit of a problem. And luckily they were really nice about it and understood that. Like, you know, I went on the advice like that I was given.
So the inevitable question is, how's quarantine been?
As I said, I'm living in my student house and I decided to come back here rather than be around my mum and dad. But it's not been too bad. Like, I'm with my friends at the minute, so we've all managed to keep each other entertained.
As the country began to shut down, many students are faced with the problem of staying here or going home. It's okay if you only live 25 minutes away, you can make that decision in a couple of minutes. But if you live on the other side of the world, it is a very different matter. Many students were faced with the problem of paying hundreds of pounds to get on the last plane to get home before national lockdown was imposed. Despite the fact no travel restrictions were ever implied, some countries weren't allowing flights in. Tier 4 visa grants were down by 99% from April to June, but eventually saw a 1% increase. Visitor visa passes were also down. Many people didn't know whether to come or go. I've spoken to 3 students, 2 of whom decided that staying at home is the best option, and 1 who thought the best idea would be to come back to Manchester, to then only find out that everything was purely online.
So basically my father called, like I was with my father the weekend before I left Manchester. But then on Monday, so it was I think like the 16th of March, he called me and he was like, yeah, you need to get back because on the 17th they're gonna like close everything and it's better if you come back. So we had to change my flight ticket. Like I paid like an extra 100 euros, I think. And then I arrived in France and it was like directly locked down. So I was like aware that I could go home without missing like any class, because I was afraid I was gonna miss like all my classes, but no. But I guess like if like the uni was still on, if like they managed like the situation, I would like definitely have stayed in the UK. Yeah, I was happier because like if I didn't go home, I would have like stayed in my room in Manchester like all alone, because all of my flatmates like were going home like me. So yeah, then I arrived in France and I was like with my sister and my mother. But it's just I'm worried now about going back to France, and because of all like the quarantine stuff, I can't just say, oh yeah, I'm going to Paris this weekend. Like it's not possible. So that's a bit challenging for me, my family, my friends. I couldn't afford just like saying no, I'm not coming back, because obviously if I wasn't coming back, my flatmates had to find a new tenant, and then again I didn't have my own space in Paris, so it was gonna be like challenging with my mother and my little sister. So it was like kind of mandatory for me like to come back.
Well, to be honest with you, I was always kind of aloof. I was never sure if I was gonna have to go or not. Like the wording, and I talked about this with my parents and we both agreed. The wording in the webpage was very much like ambiguous. It was kind of saying like, if you can't come because of travel restrictions or medical reasons, don't worry, you can do it online. So that gave me the impression like, okay, this option is only available to the students. So my plan was always, I'm gonna have to go because I won't be able to take it online. And it wasn't until I had 2 flatmates. I had almost like got a flat until I got the email like a week before I was about to like get the contract for this. That was like, oh, if you want to do it online, you can do it online. And I was like, okay, this completely changes my whole plans. I'm kind of messing up the plans for my friends, but I'm gonna have to stay because it's just to pay full tuition and rent, but I'm not having the actual experience. It's just too much. So I decided just to stay here. And I tried emailing and I tried calling, and they either wouldn't respond or they would just say, read the information on the website, or we'll be giving information in the coming weeks. To give them credit, the uni was in terms of accommodation, the uni was very accommodating. Like they said, I think, if you're not living, like email us if you're not living in your accommodation halls anymore, and you won't have to pay rent for the rest of the year. And you can leave your stuff there, and we'll work something out for you to get your stuff picked up, which was, I think, very generous of them, especially since rent was just cancelled. I think it was from 24th of March or something, rent was just cancelled, which was very helpful. I was very much hoping to get back for September, very much. Like I said, I had a flat lined up. I had 2 of my best friends who were going to be my flatmates. And it wasn't until I started seeing cases in the UK start to pick up that my dad and my mom specifically started going like, hey, at this point, we believe a lockdown will be inevitable. A lot of international students obviously have the economic means to just pay for a very expensive flight last minute, but I personally don't so much. So I would have been completely just stuck on my own in Manchester with nobody, and that's why they'd rather just I stay here. Well, my plan right now is either through Manchester Student Homes or Facebook, try and find rent a room, like literally just a room, and then try to get my stuff there and just try to make the most out of it.
I also spoke to Bianca, who lives in Hong Kong. Now, Bianca's video connection was impaired due to bad weather conditions at the time in Hong Kong, but you only need to hear her words to understand what she went through to get home in those last couple of days.
I was under the impression that, the virus would kind of just go by and it would be done in like a couple of months and I would be able to wait it out. But then everything kind of just started happening all at once. And next thing you know, all of my friends who said they were going to stay in dorms were already gone. I literally packed up like my whole dorm, packed up my whole uni life into like 6 boxes within like 2 days, and then I was gone. Well, the decision was a pretty tough one for my family because, you know, throughout this whole COVID thing, you know, there were a couple of complications like with my own family, which added a lot of like paranoia. It wasn't until actually like late August that my family decided that I was going to stay because, you know, I know that I really wanted to go back because I thought it would be a lot easier for me. You know, I pretty much made like a whole other life for myself there. And my parents definitely, they're trying to take that into account. But then, you know, just thinking about how many COVID tests I would have to take, you know, just to get there. And then my parents wanted to fly me home for the holidays. And then, you know, a 15-hour flight isn't really the same as a 45-minute drive, you know, if things go sideways. So that was also something that they had to think about, like, you know, if something else happened or if I even got sick, it would be really hard for my parents to fly because they would have to get visas and we don't even know how long that would take. So we all kind of had to really think about like the pros and cons of me going there, just me staying and waiting it out. And, you know, we kind of just came to the decision like right at the tipping point. So yeah, it was also sort of last minute as well. The best thing for us to do, I think, was just to see how like the uni reacted to any possible like outbreaks or whatever in the university, because everybody coming back like all at the same time, there's bound to be some pop-ups, some outbreaks. And it was less about there being an outbreak, but more like, is the university, like, do they have the proper plans in place? Do they know how to contain it and stuff like that? So I think even if the situation is still pretty shaky, by the time January comes around, I think my parents will feel more comfortable sending me there and I will feel more comfortable going there because I know the uni already has like a plan in place. It feels almost like I'm not like in uni, you know, like I've actually spent more time at home than I actually have in uni. It's like I'm in high school again. Like it's really, really strange. It's so surreal. It doesn't, which is bad, but yeah, I do have work and stuff like that, but you know, honestly, it's such a weird thing. Like, I think being able to, like, me paying my rent still, like, it's just kind of a sign that my parents are like, look, we'll still pay your rent because we know we want to send you, but we want you to stay here, which is a little weird. But, you know, obviously, I think talking with my friends when they're all still at their house and then watching them all move into the house we were all supposed to be in together and like watching them reunite. It's just a lot of like, ugh, I wish I was there.
As lockdown began and workplaces began to close, people welcomed the new norm of what was working from home, but only if you could. Those jobs that are in restaurants, in bars, in pubs and in pools, those jobs that students have could no longer operate. You couldn't work from home. You were placed on furlough or you were made redundant. The Office for National Statistics has said that 1 in 8 people aged 16 to 24 is now unemployed. And these statistics are still going in the wrong direction. As the furlough scheme continues, they are expecting only more people to be unemployed by the end of the year. I first spoke to Anna and Tegwin, who had their student jobs in Manchester, but then had to leave straight away within a matter of days. They tell me their struggle to not only find a new job, but retain the job that they already had.
So I worked at a supermarket, and obviously they were necessary. So my job was going around and making sure everything in the shop was legal, and they kind of just needed extra people anyway, because they had more work to do.
I phoned up the local nursing home and they needed staff because they had staff that had to go off shielding.
It was almost impossible for me to get a job. It was so hard.
Me as well, to be fair.
I don't know how many places I applied to. It was crazy.
For me, it was kind of perfect because they didn't want long-term staff because they just wanted covering for the shielding. So it kind of worked out great for both of us because, yeah, obviously it came back to uni when people were going back to work. So yeah, it was pretty good for me, and now they've kept me on as bank staff.
It was kind of good because I was like, oh, I know at least I have some sort of stability in this, element
Yeah.
of permanence in the temporary. But at the same time, it was kind of nice knowing I was going to leave, because I didn't love it, but I can.
Well, yeah, same here.
Yeah. So it was kind of
Count
like
down the days.
like, it was a good job because it got me money, and it's kind of pushed me through to like now, when I don't have as many opportunities to work.
When I told people I was working in a care home, like my friends, they were like, "Are you nuts?" So I felt very safe at my work because, like, literally every time I went into a room, I had to do new PPE.
Until the government like mandated that we had to wear protection, we just had nothing. Like, there was like hand sanitizers dotted around, but we weren't like forced. I used them obviously, but we weren't forced to.
Mm-hmm.
There was like a box of masks.
I go back to the care home.
I would go back to Morrison's
Yeah.
because I need money.
Yeah.
But if you
It's not really an option.
I also spoke to Ellie and Hannah, who both graduated last year. Ellie and Hannah both spent the summer desperately trying to find a job. Ellie was fortunate. Hannah still believes that it will be easier for her to get a job at the age of 17 than it would now that she's a graduate.
Well, I've actually had 2 jobs since. The first one was just like something sort of tied me over. It was just, I was at home near Belfast for lockdown. So as soon as the restrictions were lifted a bit, I came back to Manchester and just spent like the most stressful 2 weeks of my life trying to find a job. Managed to get one in a music shop. And I did that for just about 3 months, and then I got the job that I have now, which is as a journalist, which is really cool because that's what I wanted to do. But yeah, I think for me actually, like, the job I have now would have been the same anyway, just because it's a like global journalism company, so there is no headquarters, so we all work remotely anyway. So I'm kind of lucky in that sense because they were actually ready for the style of work that everyone's doing now, I suppose. But yeah, the search was really stressful, and I think there was so many jobs that you think like they're not career jobs, maybe it's not what you want to do, but you know, you would do them in the short term or for a couple of years, but even those kinds of jobs were just impossible to get. I have so many friends that haven't been able, you know, have years and years of experience in hospitality, years of experience in retail, and just can't get a job to sort of tide them over until the thing they really want to do comes along, you know, and it's just really stressful.
But it's just been really difficult to find something post-grad. I mean, I've been applying for stuff sort of in my field, like video production wise, but also like retail stuff and, you know, waitressing stuff, anything that I can find. And I found it's harder to get an interview now that I'm like 21 and graduated than it was when I was like 18 doing my A-levels. And it's just because obviously the job market's so saturated at the minute, it's so in demand. I'm very lucky that I'm in a position where I don't have to worry about paying rent, and I'm able to stay where I am, and I don't have to rush into something, but it's incredibly stressful. And I know a lot of friends have had to like really push it and rush into things that probably weren't the best fit just because they need the money. There's also the worry of obviously the economic impacts, and that could be quite a long lasting thing. So I'm still holding out hope, and I'm still, you know, keep applying for stuff, keep pushing on, but it's not the most optimistic outlook at the minute.
Graduation culminates the university experience, the great ceremony, the certificate at the end of your course. However, this year was a very different type of graduation. You just met Ellie and Hannah, and I spoke to them again, but this time about how it felt being the class of 2020.
Because I studied French, we were like, how are we going to do our French oral? Like, we had no idea what was going to go on. But I think at the time it felt more important to go home and be safe rather than be at uni. I didn't prefer it, but it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be, especially the French oral, because I mean, orals are just a special kind of hell. Like, it's just the worst feeling in the world. So waking up in the morning and like getting ready on Zoom was kind of strange, but yeah, it was okay. And then for my other ones, because I studied English, I just had essays to make up for the exam. So I think overall I had to put in more work, but it was, you know, make the best of a bad situation. I think they could, but obviously we couldn't have actual exams at that point. That was like proper deep lockdown when they were meant to be happening. So yeah, it probably was the right decision, but not one that any of us wanted, you know. I mean, I didn't go, like they did do an online one, but I was just like, I mean, I appreciate the fact that they put the effort in, I suppose, but it just wasn't something I like wanted to go to, and I don't even know now if I would go to a real graduation. I don't know. I think we were all thinking, oh, maybe they'll, we'll be able to do the winter one, maybe we can join them with that, but that's definitely not going to happen. And I don't know, I just feel like I'm over it now. Like, obviously I'm grateful for my degree, and I loved the time that I was at uni, but now that I'm out of Fallowfield working, it just would feel like a bit of a regression, I suppose, to have a real life graduation again. I just feel like the moment's passed, for me anyway.
So I was paying full rent up until end of June. I actually worked it out, because obviously with like holidays and stuff as well, and paying over summer, like before I moved in, I paid like 12 months rent as you normally would, but I only actually lived there for 4. Yeah, I don't like to think about how much I've lost on rent. I think it was like a presentation that I was supposed to do that was like half of my module marks just got cancelled because of the strikes. So then that left all of the weight in for that module on the final essay, which was then done under lockdown. So it was like extra pressure. But yeah, other than that, I think I only had one exam actually scheduled for the end of the year, and they just changed that to an essay. So it was like big essay season at the end of the year. I think, to be honest, I would have preferred an exam. That's kind of why I picked the course, I'm not going to lie. Especially with like dissertations as well, they got like the deadline got pushed back a little bit, which was obviously really helpful because it was a stressful time and it was nice to have a bit more time to do it. But then that pushed it further into like final exams and essay season, so it was kind of like juggling finishing a dissertation and then like 2 pretty long and like heavily weighted essays as well. It kind of like piled on the pressure, probably more so than it would have been if I'd had like an exam to break it up. I think it made a lot of sense to change it to an essay because it's generally an essay-based subject and it's something that they know that we're comfortable with. I think it was the right move in that case. I don't know if other subjects it would have worked as well. On the day that marks came out and stuff, I like had a bit of champagne with my parents and sort of celebrated a little bit at home. We had like a virtual ceremony as well, which was quite nice. And it was actually quite cool because they got people to like send in videos and like do little speeches. So I got to do a little speech at my ceremony about Fuse TV and everything. I am still holding out hope for the in-person ceremony because it's just nice to have that closure. I think it, having been taken off campus so like suddenly without having any sort of proper goodbyes, it'd be nice to see everyone for the last time and like get that closure to feel like that chapter's done.
Starting university is a harrowing experience in itself, never mind when it goes hand in hand with a global pandemic. But students this year had the added anxiety of their exam results being out of their own hands. I spoke to 2 students who discussed with me what they thought about the A-level crisis and how going to university in the midst of a pandemic really does feel.
We just got emails to let us know that we weren't going to be sitting exams. So because we didn't get a chance to do our full potential in sitting an exam. It's nerve-wracking because obviously we didn't know what we were going to be given from the college. So yeah, not knowing if you were going to be in was nerve-wracking. Yeah, I think with it being marked in a way that it's your mocks, if you say some people don't try as hard for their mocks as what they do in the real exam. So I think that you weren't really given your full potential because you couldn't actually sit the exams, or I mean, I know you could, but most people, it's when everyone will be at uni, so it's not fair, I don't think.
Do you think you could have done better if you sat your exams?
Oh, 100%, yeah. It is a bit scary you're not going to have the normal uni kind of experience in the first year, but I am looking forward to embracing it.
Well, my university was like audition based. It wasn't really about the grades, so the entry grades were really low, but because the audition process was so long, once you got in, you were basically in. So all I had to get was 2 C's. One of my friends was meant to go to Cambridge and she was the only girl. No, so there was 2 girls in the school who got in like Oxbridge, and she worked really hard and she was in my psychology class, and I know for a fact she deserves to get in. Like she worked so much harder than I did and she didn't get in. and it was completely unfair because it was like a predicted grade, so that's what she was predicted, so I don't know why the teachers didn't give her that. But I don't know whether that's like on the government's fault or like the teachers themselves, but I think it was really unfair. So I was meant to start on the 20th of September, but I've ended up starting on the 20th of October. So it's like a full month back and nothing, like the price hasn't changed or anything like that. So the tenancy starts on the 3rd of October and then it goes all the way to July, and I think we're meant to pay in full, but obviously I don't want to pay in full if I'm going to get sent home in November, do you know what I mean? So I'm not really sure what's happening at the minute. In my accommodation, there's people from different campuses, not just like the Wimbledon campus, different campuses, all different courses. I don't know anyone who's on my course in my accommodation actually, so that's already breaking the bubble system, but like they've got the bubble system in place for the people on your course.
This film wasn't supposed to create empathy or even sympathy. It was simply a collection of stories. The collection of stories from the people who feel that they haven't been heard during this pandemic. The people who feel that they've been left abandoned. They're the people of today, but they're also the people of tomorrow. And if they feel that way now, then it's not going to help anybody.